Hello, everyone. It is great
Uh,
to be here. Can you hear me okay, Candace?
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, great. It's wonderful to be here. I'm an entertainment attorney. My firm is New York based. I've been practicing this year, will make 16 years. I've been doing entertainment for almost 10 years. Actually started off as a corporate attorney on Wall Street, even though I went to law school to become an entertainment attorney, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But I mostly work in hip hop. I tell people I am an R&B queen at night, but during the day I'm a trap queen because a lot of what I do is in hip hop. And I really enjoy the space. I enjoy working with perhaps some of your favorite artists. And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes when it comes to getting music to the audience. So we'll talk a little bit about, different things. Of course, we'll be open for questions. But I'll let you start, Candace, and let me know how you want to get started.
That's a great start. Thank you so much for
Okay.
introducing yourselves. And so, everyone, I just want to remind you all that Nia is here to mentor you and to download you on all of the things that you want to know about entertainment law, music industry, legalities. So, please feel free as we continue this conversation to drop any questions that you have that may come to mind in the chat so that we could, or raise your hand so that we can go ahead and get the most out of our time with Nia today. So, Nia, thanks so much for introducing yourself. You shared just a slight bit about your journey in your current role. Can you give us an idea of what key experiences or decisions helped shape your current path?
Sure. So I'll just say this. Everyone has a different path, and I'll touch on that a little bit. First, as I mentioned, I started off as a corporate attorney, but I was actually introduced to entertainment law when I was 15 years old. My dad's best friend was managing Jill Scott, and he was an attorney, but he was managing her career. And he took my sister and I to Jill Scott's video shoot. So I was 15, my sister was 10 years old. And just being on set, seeing all the cameras, and it was just amazing. DJ Jazzy Jeff was there. So I fell in love. And I said, this is what I want to do. And my 10-year-old sister said, this is what I want to do too. So fast forward, I'm an entertainment attorney. My sister's an entertainment attorney. I'm on the East Coast. My sister's on the West Coast. So our paths are completely different. So I started in big law. When I came out of law school in 2010, we were in a recession. I had banking background and big law firms wanted me. They wanted my skills and my knowledge as a former banker. And I went in that direction. I was told by established entertainment attorneys, oh, go to big law, it'll write you a ticket to anywhere, anything you want to do once you go into big law. So I did, not necessarily because, that's what they said, but it just made the most sense given the climate. But I was miserable doing that type of work. I didn't like the people. I didn't like the work. I didn't like anything. So fast forward, like I said, I made some moves and I literally like stepped out on faith. When people say they like, I literally stepped out on faith. I didn't necessarily have a plan per se. I just knew at that point in my life that I wasn't happy and I didn't want to continue doing that work. So I left. And one thing that I remember my dad used to say is there's no such thing as an unemployed attorney. And that's true because it's all about your hustle. And that's actually, in my opinion, the case for other professionals too, because it's all about your hustle. And so I left Big Law, left all the money behind, and I started doing contract work. And that was clicking buttons. It really didn't take, much thought to do the things, but it provided some income as I started building my practice. Interestingly enough, my sister had just graduated law school. Had the opportunity to intern in the music space based off of some context that I had given her. So we started the practice together. She had a little experience in the music space. I had practical experience, 6 years. So I was well trained, and the two of us started figuring it out. And all it took was one client. And that one client started sending us other clients. And even though we weren't extremely knowledgeable in this space, we had the drive and the resources. And the biggest thing, the resources. Because if you have people in your corner who you can call, email, rely on, and it should be a two-way street. Like even though I didn't have a lot to offer someone else at the time, my connections were genuine. I was consistent with staying in touch. I didn't call just when I needed a favor. And I met some established attorneys, two men in particular, one being Bob Celestin, the other one being Josh Kamen. And they really brought me in different ways to teach me the ropes. So I was getting clients, but I needed practical experience. So they really taught me the ropes. And then, of course, it was late night staying up, learning, understanding, just trying to, just really grinding because this is the space I want to be in. So I had the resources, the people who believed in me because they saw how much I wanted it. And then I started doing work with them and for them. They're like, okay, you're smart, you're hungry. I told them I'm here to stay. And next thing you know, I'm co-counseling. So, these are my clients, but they're kind of, helping me along the way. So, with that said, my sister getting an opportunity to work for Def Jam. I continued on with the practice. So, she decided to go to a label and then another label. And then she went to a small law firm and now she's on her own. So we are like colleagues, but we don't work together. We don't, it's my practice. She has her own practice. But of course we talk every day and we do a lot of work with a lot of the same people. So it's a really special story because I mean, it started as a dream as little girls, and here we are as grown women doing exactly what we said, we wanted to do.
I love that story. So many interesting things came to mind. I want to ask you so many questions, but we're not doing a one-on-one girl catch up. So we'll continue on with the flow of the questions. But I do want to remind you guys, as we continue the conversation, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. There's one thing that resonated with me in particular that you share. Well, two. One is that no matter what industry or what space you're in, your drive, your motivation, your hustle is going to help you get to where you're going to be, right? But the other thing is that you reminded me, and that's going to lead into this next question, that this is the music industry, but this is the music business, right? And there's a lot of business behind creating and working directly with artists who just simply want to create. So my challenge, my question to you is, what is the biggest challenge you face when trying to explain legal contracts to an artist who just simply wants to create?
Well, the biggest challenge is, I guess, their attention and their desire or lack thereof to learn. But it is a business, and I encourage my clients to learn. And I especially don't ever want a client to come back to say they didn't understand or I didn't explain. So I educate my clients. I spend time, and that is actually how I know I separate myself from some of my colleagues because I have patience in that respect. I tend to be a big sister, a mom, auntie, therapist, whatever it is that they need. I just establish a great relationship with them. So when I talk to them, whether it's, I've had a client in particular where I'm like, I want you to understand this industry. You have a lot going on, and I want you to be a businesswoman. And I said it a few times. I started using some resources, such as, reaching out to a business manager and really trying to help her become that, build her into that. And she's young, so, initially it's like she just wants to create. And she's loving this, this music industry thing. But whatever you do in life, if you are working, you want to be paid. And when you are being paid and you don't know where that money's going, you start paying attention. So, that's sometimes what it takes for someone to, pay attention. So the goal is to prevent those types of things. So very early on, I tell clients, look, I want you to understand. I don't expect for you to understand everything in detail, but we are going to talk about what's in this agreement. I want to make sure that you understand it and in layman's terms. So agreements, they can be 30 pages long and they can be very intimidating. But because I'm relatable and I can turn it on and turn it off depending on who I'm talking to, I can break down concepts. And they're like, oh, okay, I understand that. I mean, I may talk about going to the new dealership and buying a car. Are we renting? Well, are we leasing or similar situation with a house? Are we renting a house or are we actually buying this house? So when we talk about certain concepts like a lease versus a license, like there or a master deal versus buying a home. So when they think about their everyday situations, well, where do you live? Okay, who owns that? Okay, so what if you have a house and then you decide to rent your house for 10 years? Okay, so that's like you renting your songs as a license to a company. So really just breaking it down in layman terms. And, there are times where the manager may be a little bit more involved than the client is, a little distant and kind of relying on the manager. So even with that, I want to make sure that the manager understands, and I'll still reach out to the client and, hey, just got off your phone, get us off the phone with, with your manager. We went over da 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 da. Let me know if you have any questions, but essentially these are the, most important things. So I can't force anyone to pay attention, but for the most part, I do think that they hear me loud and clear. They understand the consequences of their actions or lack thereof, and they tend to take heed to it. And I also provide different material, such as I actually have the book right here, Donald Passman's All You Need to Know About the Music Industry. And that's whether you're an artist, a producer, a manager, if you're helping on a sync with sync licenses. I mean, it's all in there. So yes, so I try to be a resource in many ways for my clients.
That's amazing. And you do have an approachable way to work. We've worked directly together, and you've broken things down to me based on some of the project or one of the project that we worked on together that made it so much clearer for me to communicate back to the team, when I was kind of liaising with you. So I do appreciate that, and that you have that approach. I know attorneys in legal matters can feel intimidating, as you mentioned. So it's always good to have that soft touch and that approachable way of dealing with clients and managing your business. One thing that I want to just remind students here, in which I remind all of the students that I speak to who are in the music business, that you are your own business. You are the music. You are the business and the music. When you go and you play a show, you're going to need your LLC. You're going to need whatever business, that you have to be postured and prepared so that you can actually get paid. In order to actually get paid, you're going to have your business postured in order. So my question for you is, what are some, like I said, when you think about legal matters, it can be intimidating. So you normally think, oh, I only need an attorney when things are going bad. But what are some things that an artist or a professional would need going into music matters in business, like that they would need support on from a legal perspective, any counsel that you would provide for them going into it without any trouble on the horizon just yet?
Okay. Well, one thing I always tell clients or prospective clients, don't sign anything. That is, the biggest thing. Don't sign anything. So, in terms of, having things in order, I mean, ideally, it would be great if an artist or a producer, or just talent, if they have a loan out company, like a furnishing company, essentially a LLC or some type of corporation. A lot of times that doesn't happen until, later on. Even in terms of, I mentioned a business manager earlier, some of those things, they happen later on, right? But just some of the fundamentals, I think just like I said, being aware, having resources, people that you can reach out to, having some knowledge, or of course using Chat GBT, which I feel like at this point everything is right in front of us. But I'm not an advocate of actually using Chat GBT, because I've heard some say, oh, I just put in Chat GBT and it just told me no. But preliminarily, if there are concepts that you don't understand, what is a control composition or what is this? Yeah, I think that it could be very helpful until you actually have an attorney, or until you actually have a manager, or until you actually have, so there are resources, and I believe in resources. So with that, once you're in a position where you have an offer or a deal in front of you, or there are certain discussions, there are people reaching out, showing interest, I think, it's a great time, if you haven't already, to reach out and have an intro with an attorney. Some people do it far in advance, like, hey, I'm taking this music thing seriously. This is what I want to do. Or I just started representing an artist, and I just want to learn all that I can and just understand like what the next steps are. So I have those calls all the time. I'll say, say, hey, I can do a, 15, 20-minute intro call. And they may not have anything going on yet. They have that hunger, they have that desire, and they're being resourceful and they're already thinking like, okay, we want to make sure that we at least have somebody in our pocket when we do pop off. So I do those calls all the time. And you'd be surprised, 6 months later, a year later, they may hit me up every now and then, just kind of let me know, hey, we're doing well, or I'll follow them on IG. And then after a year and a half of hustling, it's time. They've already established, at least a general introduction, a relationship with me, and, we move forward. So I do those calls. I can't say all my colleagues do, but it's something that, I make the time for a 15, 20 minutes to talk about just where you are, where you're looking to go. I think it's another reason that I separate myself because, like I said, I have patience. I'm willing to put that 15, 20 minutes in, and it may never lead to anything. Who knows? But it makes me feel good to, like I said, be a resource and to be available to people. The people who may not be able to pay me right now, but what's 15 minutes? Just kind of talk about the things that I enjoy and I talk about anyway.
That's true. You never know where the artist is going to lead to down the line, and they're going to remember how gracious you were in your wise counsel and providing for them. And they're going to come back to you when they actually have an offer or something right in front of them in order to manage. So you just
Yeah.
never know what can come out of that initial informational call. We do have a question from Liliana. Liliana, you want to jump on and ask Nia your question?
Sure. So I was just wondering, I'm in school right now. So for law students who are interested in building a more global entertainment law career or like going into international IP, what opportunities or experiences do you recommend that we try doing now or early on to put ourselves in a better position later on?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So oftentimes, every now and then I'll say I'm a music attorney, but most of the time I say I'm an entertainment attorney. But truly, I've done a lot and I've narrowed it down over the years to being more of a music attorney. But for a while, I would do anything that looked like, smelled like, tastes like entertainment because I wanted to establish my brand. So with that, I did IP work, intellectual property, whether that's copyright, whether that's trademark. Any artist should, at some point in their career, protect their IP. So I've done all that stuff. And I think even though, you may have an idea as to the area that you're interested in, I think it's always great to keep your options open and to, see what's available. You may like it, you may not, who knows? But if it's entertainment, if it gets you some experience, I would say be open to it. So there's always, of course, internships, right, that are available. And what law school are you in? Are you at?
I go to Southern University Law
Okay.
School.
Okay. So, I mean, I don't know if they have, I'm sorry, what year are you?
I'm a 1L, but I'll be
Oh,
like finishing up
you're going
this
to your
semester.
2L year.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So do they have opportunities within your school, maybe your 3L year, for you to get some practical experience? Because my law school did, so that's why I'm asking.
I believe so. I know they offer like externships and everything. And I'm also in my school's entertainment like club. So they pretty much introduce us to all these different opportunities that we can try to apply for as well.
Okay, well, absolutely. So yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Internships, externships, those are the things that'll get you the experience. And what I was saying before was just being open because I know you mentioned global entertainment law career or international IP. So there are, of course, firms that are based here in the States, and they have offices overseas. So, if, and not to say that firm life is for you or what you would like to do, but it's just an idea. It's an example of how you can get that reach if you were to work for a firm that has an international offices and who have those practice areas that you're interested in. Even with that, I will say if you do start interviewing, whether it's for a firm or any other job, keep your options open. I would say to be as broad as possible. If granted, the opportunity to interview for whether it's a firm or otherwise, because you don't want to be pigeonholed. What if it's not global? But what if it gives you IP experience? The IP experience can lead you to somewhere else. So I just, true story, my major in undergrad was sports management. I thought I was going to be the next Jerry Maguire because I like music, I like sports, and I still like sports, but music has really just become my thing. But what I realized after I did some interviews, even undergrad for sports management, that I was selling myself short. I just said, you know what? Let me just say management. So I became a management major. And basically, I'm like, I can manage anything. But sports just, it was just so, it was a niche. And I just didn't want to put myself in that position. So with that, I know, international, global are some of the key phrases in your question, but overall, you want IP experience. Overall, you want entertainment law experience. And then you just get in there, do what you got to do, and make some moves so that you can get the exposure that you want internationally.
Thank you.
You're
Great
welcome.
question.
And good luck to you.
Thank you.
So I'm sure James have gone over this with the class over the weeks, but can you just talk more about what IP means? I don't want just assume that everyone, these are a lot of young professionals and emerging artists. I don't want to just assume that they understand what IP is, although they may have learned a little bit about it. Can you just break a little bit down about what IP is in the music industry?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, I used to do IP work, and over the last, I'm going to say almost year and a half, I've fallen back from that, and I send all my IP clients, I refer them, elsewhere because my music practice has just gotten that busy. So the two things that I was able to do was trademark and copyright. So, but patent is also under IP as well, and that's more scientific. So we don't need to necessarily get into that. But if we're talking about IP, we're usually talking about trademark, we're talking about copyright, we're talking about patent. So trademark is about protecting your brand. So I had mentioned, at some point an artist, they get to a certain part of their career, they should want to protect their brand. You don't want two Drakes running around. Okay. You don't want two, Rihanna's running around or even let's talk about Fenty, right? Her line. So that's all about her brand. If I show you a Fenty bottle, if I show you a Pepsi can, it's certain things, it's certain marks or certain logos that you see and immediately you know who that company is. So trademark has a lot to do with diluting or preventing the dilution of a brand, or of course protecting your brand. So that's the trademark side. And with that, it's its own application, just like patent has their own application, and that's all through the government. So the government, they're the ones that the USPTO, they're the ones that review the applications that come in, and they determine whether or not you can be granted a trademark or not based off of, different things. And clearly, if you are Pepsi or Fenty, you want to protect your mark. So anyone that's trying to do Fenty with a PH, ENTY, and do it in still cosmetics or, a similar category, you want to make sure, or yes, as the owner of the Fenty trademark, you want to prevent that other company. So that's what the government is there for, to review those applications and to determine whether or not a certain mark will be granted or not. So that's trademark. Copyright is all about essentially your talent, right? Whether that's writing a poem, whether that's writing a song. So all those things that are artistic that people do, you want to protect that too, because you don't want someone basically taking, your manuscript and claiming that it's theirs or making it their own or just changing a few things or putting it in chat and, just saying, hey, just mix this up a little bit so that it's mine. So copyright protects something different. It's not about your brand per se. It's more so about you as an artist. And when I say artist, that can be in so many different, you can look at that in so many different ways. So yes, but those are two different types of protection.
Amazing. We have another question from Destiny. Destiny, you want to come on and ask me your question?
Hi, I'm Destiny.
Hi,
Thanks for being
Destiny.
here today. My question is in regards to might the entertainment attorney be the one who negotiates an artist obtaining their masters? Like, and then how successful, or what are the metrics that make arguing obtaining your master's more like feasible? Like, for example, I'm familiar with Mariah the Scientist. She wasn't super huge, definitely not where she is now when she first got signed and agreed to have her master's. So I'm like wondering, what does that look like?
So yes, when it comes to recording agreements, distribution agreements, ideally it should be an attorney who's reviewing and negotiating on the artist's behalf. So, and masters is a big part of it. And of course, it depends on the type of deal. But yes, if it's a master's deal, then that's what your major labels generally want. It's important that the artist understands what's in that agreement. What type of deal is it? And that's essentially where I start. So if someone comes to me and say, hey, Atlantic is interested in me, they're gonna link me with, the business side, and we'll, pull you in with the legal side. Okay, great. So if I hear Atlantic, I'm like, okay, well, that's a major label. This is going to be a master's deal. However, there are some joint ventures and there are some other labels that are under Atlantic that can be more flexible and that can do different types of deal. But overall, if I'm hearing one of the major record companies, I already know the type of deal that it is. So let me talk about, for example, like Santa Ana. Santa Ana is under the Sony umbrella. Santa Ana is one that they do major label deals, which have to do with the masters, but they also do distribution deals. And they can upstream you if they choose to a master deal. But overall, that's a license deal. So in that instance, if someone comes to me, I'm asking, okay, well, I can't assume, right? In that instance, I'm asking, all right, well, do you know what type of deal they're looking to sign you to? So if they're like, oh, well, it's a license deal, then we're not talking about the masters, because with a license deal, my client will retain their masters. We're once again talking about renting your house to someone for 10 years or 7 years. Whereas with the master, we're talking about selling your house. Essentially, you can't live there. You don't own it anymore. So either way, I'm the one to negotiate those things and to educate my clients so they can make an informed decision. Doing a master's deal, a 360 deal isn't for everyone. It's a personal decision. I can never make that for anyone. All I can do is educate them and explain to them what's the differences between the two deals. And the bag should look different too, right? If I'm giving up my master's, it better be a really good deal or just a really good situation overall for me personally to make that decision. But outside of major label deals, you have artists who are assigned to production deals where they give up their masters to a production company. So any of us on here can come together and establish a production company and we can start signing artists. And then we can take those artists to wherever we want to take them to sign them to other types of deals. So that's a whole nother ball game, but it's now the production company that's going to the label. So you're not signing directly with that label or that distributor, any longer. You're doing it through a furnishing company or a loan out company. But yes, so owning a master's, or giving up your master's, I think it's a big decision. And like I said, it's very personal. There's some, especially, independent artists who they look at a Russ or some other, or Chance the Rapper. They look and they're like, they did it, I want to do it too. And I'm like, well, it's doable. There are so many other companies like United Masters that you can go to, like Big X the Plug, and be very successful as an independent artist. So Big X the Plug didn't give up his masters, but he is very successful over at United Masters. I represent Anicia, who's also at United Masters. Similar situation. United Masters, they're all about you being independent, remaining independent. So yeah, so it's just a little bit about the type of agreements, the difference between them, and how do I know whether it's a license or a master deal? A lot of times it's who's reaching out. And in those instances, yeah, we get down to just really the nitty-gritty of the material terms. And one of the most important things is whether someone's willing and able or ready to give up their masters.
That's a great question. And so to that, can you give any pointers or suggestions or tips? Obviously, without having not without having an attorney, but how an artist can protect their independence in general long term?
So when you say protect their independence, just give me a little bit more so I understand. I'm sorry, I lost an earring while I was talking a little crazy. Go
Right.
ahead, Candace, I'm listening.
So is signing with someone and negotiating whether you keep your masters or not the only route? Like, are there any other routes where artists can protect their independence long term without right away signing off their masters in order to have a leg up?
Okay, yeah. So, especially in this climate and with so many different distributors out there, like I mentioned, United Masters, but there are others as well. Alamo, for example, is another, and Santa Ana on the distribution side, and there's Signal, and there are so many other companies. Empire, how could I forget Empire? They're my people over there. I have clients over at Empire too. There are so many different companies that are around that have the reach, and I'm not gonna say the money, but they have deep pockets where a Big X the Plug or some other Shabuzi, he's with Empire, where they can remain independent. So these license deals, I generally try to get them to be single digits in terms of the term. So that means if we do a deal with, Empire, and we do a 7-year license, they're basically just renting your music for 7 years. They're exploiting it for 7 years. And then it comes back to you and you can take it wherever you want, right? So being in an independent deal, if you're in a deal, is a way to have that longevity and remain independent, but also, to make lucrative money, because there are labels or distributors that are established and able to offer six-figure deals, high six-figure deals, or even seven-figure deals to artists at this point. And that wasn't always, the case, but there are a lot of options out there. So there are times where a prospective client will call me and they'll say, hey, the labels are reaching out. I'm like, well, who's reaching out? And a lot of times, depending on where the artist, it's the same label. So it's like, oh, okay, this is going to be interesting. And when I say the same labels, I'm talking about like if an artist goes viral on a Thursday and people start reaching out on a Tuesday, depending on their level of, I guess, their level, how many people are truly like running it up, whatever that song is, will depend on who's reaching out. But if it's Santa Ana that's reaching out, it's probably a Signal that's reaching out. It's probably a United Masters that's reaching out on that level, right? We're talking about independent. If someone's really running it up and it's the majors that are interested, it's usually the majors that are reaching out. But it's not just one. So I'm like, okay, so I see where you are based off of, who's reaching out. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that artist is interested in doing that, that big deal, at that time. So yeah. So in terms of just protecting yourself in a license deal, I do look at it as being it's a lot less risky, and you can get out, you can get in, you can get out. There's also create music. I've had clients who have signed and have done one deal and they keep it moving, or broke. Same thing, you can one deal and it may be a nice little bag and you keep it moving. So I have clients who that is what they do over a period of time. They're like, all right, it's a quick bag. We're going to see, what this looks like working with this particular company, but I'm not locked down. Like I can keep it moving and I still own my masters.
So I want to say she's mentioning a whole lot of platforms and labels and distribution companies that you guys should be writing this information down, because these are the ones that you're going to be researching and studying and understanding on how to plug your artistry into. So it's very much important for you not to, this could be the first time you're hearing about some of these players, but these are the players in the game. So you should be writing down who these players are so that you can look into them on your own, to be honest, because when it's time and your music hits, you want to be prepared.
Yeah, and look and see who they have, right? So I also represent YK Niece, and she's with APG, which is they're independent, but they also have a RG, which is under APG, and it's just their distro leg. So something like that, it just may be a one-off situation. So there are so many different platforms and different companies that you can essentially test the waters. And many of them, depending on where you are, will offer some marketing dollars. They may put some dollars, in your pocket. If you can negotiate that on top of, marketing dollars. Sometimes we're able to negotiate a recording budget and those. So there are, a lot of different things that these distributors who license music can do. They have sync departments, which helps get music played in movies, NBA 2K, video games, all those things, Fortnite. So there's so many different opportunities to make music and to make money off of your music in the music industry.
They have tour budgets, guys. I'm in the live music and the touring industry. Sometimes they have a small budget to help support promo push for your music. It's just really important that you understand who these potential partners and collaborators are, because when you put your music out and it just falls short, you're going to wish you had some of that support. So it's important that you're knowledgeable about what support you will need and how to garner it. So I just want to emphasize that. Just a personal question. How do you determine who you take on as a client? Do you have to have an affinity for their music and like them, or you have to like the type of deal that they're going into? What is it that you determine this is a client that aligns with my values as a music industry attorney?
That's a good question. Ideally, they have to be hungry because I'm a hustler. They have to be a hustler too. Okay, if I'm up at 1 and 2 in the morning, they need to be in the studio at 1 and 2 in the morning. They need to be hustling. And for the most part, I can say that clients that I have or that I've met have that same desire. They have that hunger. And they see, how I am too immediately. All right, cool. We can get on a call if you on the West Coast. Sure, we can get on a call at 1 a.m. my time if that's the best time for you. Let's get this done. Let's talk about it. So, being hungry is important. And like I said, listening. I can't tell them what to do, but when I tell you all the risk involved, when I explain the details of a situation, you have to listen, to at least what I'm saying, because from a liability aspect, I've had a client that I had very early on. We went our separate ways because I refused to put myself in a position that he wanted to put me in. And I'm like, this is my career. I have to work with these people, right? Whatever label you're thinking of, like I have to do. So this is a relationship that's ongoing, and I can't put myself, in that position. So, and there have been instances where I've highly recommended that a client not take a deal or not, do something, and they've gone on to do it. And I will send an email. They're still my client, right? But I will send an email covering my ass, basically stating I highly recommend that you do not take this deal or do this based off of XYZ. And, when shit hits the fan, I'm still here. I'm still here. And I'm not going to say I told you so, but it's like, how do we clean this up? We got to now bring other people in. We have to, pull resources. And now we got to clean this mess up. So, with that, things happen. This industry can chew you up and spit you out real quick. So, yes, having someone that is going to ride for you and don't play about you is important. And like I said, you can start seeing, like I get passionate when it comes to my clients because I don't play about them. And, I have a diverse, clientele in terms of, men, women, and, I have a client out of Asia that I'm working with now who's like doing like the K-pop, and, I have other clients in Europe and what have you. I don't play about any of them. And, that's important for them to understand that, like I'm here. Nobody else is here, because when it comes to a manager, and no shade to managers, I love working with managers. I teach a lot of them the ropes, if they're green. But from an ethical standpoint, like I took an oath. So I have no vested interest. I mean, yes, I get paid whether generally if a deal goes through, but in terms of like prioritizing interest, it's my client's interest. With the manager, it's different. They should act on the best interest of their client. But for me, like I took that oath to act in the best interest of my client. So I take that, to heart. And, I represent them zealously. And, and at the same time, like I said, I'm more than just their attorney. Sometimes I'm even their, accountant sending in invoices and doing things that I don't want to do because I'm like, but you need to be paid. Who's going to do it? So sometimes I'm doing that too. So it's really about growing with my clientele, and that's one thing I pride myself on. And I've had a lot of the same clients for many, many years now. And like I said, they're the ones that send me more clients. I do no marketing at all. So it's just based off word of mouth, and they're out here talking about me. Good things though. So that's why my phone keeps ringing, and it's a beautiful thing, that growth.
Congratulations. We love to hear that. And I just love your passion, not only for the legal business, but for protecting your clients and just overall loving what you do. So it exudes, and we appreciate that. I appreciate that. James, you have a question for Nia. Let's hear it.
Hi, Nia. Thanks for coming on. I love everything you're saying. You might be getting calls from me too. We have Sync Person from United Masters coming on tomorrow,
Nice.
who's my friend and mentee. But I'm wondering if you can suggest any questions we should be asking her about Sync.
About sync. Okay.
Yeah.
I think sync is fascinating. A lot of times what I get on my end is the license, right? Well, I'll get the proposed terms, and a lot of my clients pretty much give me the green light to decide whether or not, we're moving forward with it. And most of the time we are, because we don't want to be the hold up for a song not being in a movie or the song not being. So I would say maybe just talk a little bit about, I guess, how they identify, like how do they come, how do the terms come about? Because I would like to know. I may actually tune in because it's very shocking to me that I'll see major companies, let's like in sports, for example, that want to play certain songs, popular songs, but their budget's only $1,000 for songs that are popping. And I'm like, but you're the biggest company in this particular sport. How is it you've only budgeted $1,000 to play my client's song? So I'd be interested, yeah, and knowing that, I probably should talk to that person too to get an idea.
Nia,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, no,
I,
no, to get an understanding of how that all comes about.
I was gonna
And
say, please come on, please come. I want you and Candace both to come because, part of my mentorship of Kayla is that, I want her to meet more people, and I've been talking to her about Candace for the longest time. But you'd be welcome to come on the call. I also have some answers for you about that because I do so much film music,
mm,
and it's sort of what happens a lot of times is they do the whole budget, but they don't really think about music until they've done all the other really expensive things and they spend all their money up. That happens, but it's good for you to ask that of a sync person who comes from United Masters and where they in the space they work in. So thanks so much.
yeah, no, you're welcome. But yeah, I do find that fascinating. And, I tell my client, listen, it's not a lot of money, and everyone is being paid MFN, right? Most favored nation. So if $1,000 is the budget, is based off of their publishing interest. So someone may get $200, someone else may get 250 or what have you. But it's always cool to get additional exposure, right? It helps run the numbers up. So, at any major game that you go to in any sport arena, you're going to hear, take me through there, take me through there. Like you're gonna hear my client, you're gonna hear, and it's gonna run it up. So one way or another, I had a client on was it Jimmy Fallon. So I also represent Rosama, who's a part of Big X the Plugs team, and one of the other he goes by Kev Got Bands. He's one of the other guys who's signed to Big X, and I represent them. And they were on Jimmy Fallon. So that something like that, of course, we had to do, a sync license, and everybody, all the writers need to sign off. When I talk about writers, it's the producers, it's any featured artist, it's the main artist. Everybody needs to sign off. And that's what I said, we never want to be the hold up. And we're like, hey, it's a small little bag, buy you some groceries. It's not going to buy you much of anything, but it's running that song. We're getting more exposure, and that helps in other ways.
Yes, absolutely. You are getting exposure into media lanes that you probably didn't anticipate getting exposure into. And when she says everybody getting a couple $100 here or there, that means that everybody who are involved in that song is getting paid off that song. Everyone has to sign off on that song, on that license. So it's a process, and
Yeah.
it has to be worth it for you. We are about 3 minutes left, and I just want to mention to you, Nia, that we're so grateful for your time. And if you could share with them briefly where they could locate you or find you if they have any other questions, or if they want to do a quick informational with you, or if they want to continue the conversation with you. Are you on LinkedIn or IG, or where can they follow you and connect with you?
Yeah, sure. I'll type in my email and my IG into the chat. And I think once we all disconnect, it will go away. So you'll want to do that right now. And I don't know. Okay. My daughter put that little emote, that little three, what are those, cats? I'm gonna have to change that. I'm looking in
That's
the
why
chat.
my computer is not working. Son, he games on it. So I'm like, let me put my computer away. I'm on the phone.
Oh
So
my,
before we check, I want to ask one quick
sure.
question from you. Since we're here at the Grammy Museum and we're surrounded by music industry or music history, if you could have been in the room as an attorney for any iconic artist in history, either to protect them or to see a legendary deal go down, who would it be and why?
So I thought about this question earlier, and immediately I was like, oh, Aretha Franklin. So I told you guys, during the day, I'm a trap queen, but at night I'm an R&B queen, and I'm like old school. So I love, love, love Aretha Franklin, and fortunately, I was able to see her perform some years before her passing. So she's just, she's iconic. She's a beast. I mean, the queen of soul, and I can't even really tell you much about her deals because it's so long ago, and I don't even know if that kind of information is available. But to see her sign and to know, because I do like going to the studio sometimes to see everything come together, so that would also be a part of it, like seeing her sign and seeing her actually do her magic would be amazing. So that is my answer. But I will say I watched Ray again the other day with Jamie Foxx, and sometimes, you just gotta watch movies again. I remember loving it before, and I loved it again, right? When I watched it. But he made moves, and he took his career into his own hand. I don't know if you guys have seen it. If you haven't, I would say go watch it. They were always trying to they was trying to get Ray, right? Get Ray for his coins because he was blind. And he's like, no, I'm gonna need my money in singles, or I'm gonna need my money in. So anyway, that came to mind as well because he made a big move. He left Atlantic to go somewhere else. And he was locked in. They're like, Ray, we thought we were family. He's like, yeah, but can you match this? So back in that time, him being a black man, I mean, he took his career and he took it to a whole nother level. So, and of course, I appreciate when an artist or talent starts to learn the business, and things start to look different when you take your career into your own hands. So I think that's a good note to end on, taking your
Yeah,
career, whatever that is, into your own hands.
1000%. And James dropped in the chat, he owned his own masters. So
That part.
yes. Well, we really appreciate you guys. Show some love for Nia. Drop her some hearts and some emojis, and let her know how much we appreciate her time and her mentorship and expertise and her wonderful knowledge that she
Thank
works
you.
years to acquire and continuing to grow. And feel free to tap in with her if you guys have any questions and want to continue mentorship with her. Nia is a wonderful executive or legal executive in the music industry, and very gracious, as you can see, with her time and her heart. So we really appreciate you, Nia. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you all. Good luck to everybody. Hope to hear from some of you.
Thank
I'm
All
you.
right. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.